Okay, let's try this again. Second time's the charm, right? Welcome back. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Joint Standing Committee on Labor and Housing. It's an absolute delight to be here in our hybrid mode of in-person and also being streamed not only live on the internet through YouTube, but as well as through the Zoom meeting as well. We are going to start with introductions, and I know we're trying to be very careful and not jinx anything. So Representative Drinkwater, would you prefer we start to the left or to the right today with introductions?
My politics are to the right.
Okay, so we'll be starting. Yes.
I just wanted to remind everybody that if you don't press the little red button and see the little red light, then your wry comments will go unheard. And so you'll just want to make sure as we go left to right or right to left that you see that little red light before you introduce yourself.
And if you don't press your mic, for those who are watching, it's going to be like the Garfield cartoon without Garfield, and I'll just look like I'm talking to myself. So please hit your mic. With that, we'll start to the left and head to the right per Drinkwater's request. And Representative Rader, please take it away with introductions.
Thank you. My name is Amy Rader. I represent House District 125, which is a portion of Bangor.
I'm Representative Gary Drinkwater, representing District 121.
Hi, everybody. I'm Sarah Pebworth. I represent House District 133 in the Blue Hill Peninsula. That includes Blue Hill, Brooksville, Brooklyn, Castine, Sedgwick, and Surrey.
Good afternoon. I'm Representative Joshua Morris. I represent House District 75, which is Turner, Leeds, and Livermore.
Hi, I'm Representative Scott Cuddy. I represent House District 98, which is Winterport, Frankfort, Searsport, and Swanville.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Mike Sylvester, Representative Mike Sylvester. I am the representative from District 39, which is the Eastern Peninsula portion of Portland and the Fighting Islands of Casco Bay. And for the final time, I am the House Chair of this committee.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Craig Hickman. I represent Senate District 14, 11 towns in Southern Kennebec County, including my hometown of Winthrop.
Good afternoon. I'm Representative Dick Bradstreet from House District 80, and that's comprised of my hometown of Vassalboro, Windsor, Somerville, and part of Augusta.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Tracy Gear. I represent House District 9, which is Kennebunkport, and Coastal Biddeford and Kennebunk.
And I am last and least. I'm Sophie Warren. I'm fortunate to represent part of my hometown in Scarborough, Maine.
Representative Warren, I would highly disagree with that statement. And I also forgot to introduce myself. So I am Senator Maddie Daughtry. I represent Senate District 24, which are the incredible communities of Brunswick, Harpswell, Freeport, North Yarmouth, and Pownell. Just as a reminder, we have the mics in front of us, just so folks know that this meeting is being streamed live over audio, as well as YouTube, as well as our Zoom portion for the hybrid model as well. And we are gathered here today, not only to honor the last day of my esteemed House Chair, but also for two work sessions on LD 2003 and LD 1808. We do have amended language on these, so unless there are any further questions from the committee, I think it's time to jump right in. Seeing none, I will open the work session on LD 2003. And I should add that we are ably assisted today by our incredible OPLA analyst, Steve Langland, as always, as well as Ava Reed, who is stepping in for Justin as our committee clerk. So thanks to both of them for keeping the boat moving forward. And with that, Steve.
Sure. So you should have in front of you a revised draft of LD 2003. Which was sent out this morning to you electronically as well as to the interested parties. I'm happy to defer to the speaker who made those changes.
Thank you. And at this time, I would call up Speaker Fecto.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Honorable members of the Joint Standing Committee on Labor and Housing, good to be before you. I checked the YouTube to see if it was working as I was seated there, and you all look great on both in person and online, so that's great. I will walk through the document that is before you and I'll try to note changes as they've been made, and Steve, if I miss anything, hopefully you'll call me out. So First and foremost, I should say that since this committee last met and voted on this bill, there has been numerous outreach from folks across the state whose everyday profession is in planning, and I am incredibly appreciative of the municipal officials and planners from all across Maine who have reached out to make sure that we have the strongest bill possible, and to make sure that the language that was in the bill reflects what is used in the practice of planning. And I think that as a result of that input, we have a stronger bill that will help make sure more housing is available to more people in our state. So in the first section of the bill, section 3, there are no changes from what you voted on. In section 4 of the bill, the Housing Opportunity Program, this is the language that adopts the technical assistance and the incentive program. This is the language that reflects what's in the budget or proposed budget. And there are no changes in this section. Obviously, previously you had all struck, well, those of you on the majority report had struck the language that was presented in the bill, which was constructed in a different way, and replaced it with this new language. Under section 9, the affordable housing density. So there are a few changes here. One, I would note the implementation date of these sections changes from, I believe, April 20th, 2023 to July 1st, 2023. So wherever you had seen previously an implementation date, and now reflects July 1, 2023. The main thrust behind that change was the folks reaching out saying that in some cases town meetings occur that will require perhaps the community to make some changes in their own existing ordinances, and they wanted to be able to have their town meeting ahead of these changes. So we want to make sure that we gave folks that opportunity to do so if it was necessary, and generally provides more time for implementation, which I don't think is a bad thing. I can't recall if this was in the version that was adopted initially at the committee or not, but also in that first line under the density bonus, we clarify that the density bonus only applies to communities that already have density requirements in place. So if you're a community that doesn't have any density requirements, the density bonus would inherently not apply to you. The other significant change in this section is item number 2. Under after the section 1 with the definition, you have item 2, density requirements. We clarify that the affordable housing developments are only permitted where where multifamily dwellings have already been permitted by the town. So in places where multifamily housing is already allowed, the density bonus would be applied. So we're not talking about taking a lot that was otherwise designated and turning it into affordable housing developments. Also in this section, we add the word based in front of density. So instead of saying the bill as drafted said at least 2.5 the density that is otherwise allowed, we add 2.5 times the base density. So if a community already had a density bonus, we're not saying you apply the density bonus on top of the existing density bonus. We're saying the density bonus applies to the base density, whatever that may be, community from community. So it will vary. And then we also say that the density bonus is only applied in designated growth areas. So for communities that have comprehensive plans where they've designated certain lots as growth areas, the density bonus will only be leveraged in for those lots, and the lots must be served by public water, or the lots must be served by a public water system and a municipal, special district, or comparable sewer system. This special district and comparable sewer system language was asked for by the planners, and you will see that language get used throughout the sections where we talk about sewer systems. Exciting stuff. And so again, under water and wastewater, if a housing structure is connected to a municipal, special district, or other comparable sewer system. So again, that language appears under the density bonus section, under section 5, 5A, and also under C, if a housing structure is connected to public, special district, or other centrally managed water system. Again, language that was requested by the planners. And then also the addition of the volume, the addition of proof of adequate service to support any additional flow created by the structure. Proof of payment. I think that language should have been copied. The sewer system, proof of adequate service to support any additional flow created by the structure. Yeah, created by the structure, which was and proof of payment for the connection. This is the same language that appeared in the sewer section. It was just requested that we add it to the public water section as well, or the water system section as well. We also add language related to private parties. Steve might want to change the way that section is introduced. I'm not sure private parties is exactly the right terminology, but I welcome his suggestion. But nonetheless, this section is intended to state what was already expected, which was nothing in the section is intended to interfere with or invalidate an enforceable easement, covenant, deed restriction, or other agreement or instrument between private parties. So things that already existed, we're making clear they still exist. They can't be disrupted by this section. We take this same language and apply it to the additional sections as well. I'll point out when we do that. And then I think that's it. Those other changes here were from the first time, I believe. Under section 10, we changed the word permitted in the introduction of the section to allowed, just to make sure we're avoiding that term of art in building. That permitting is clearly a different term than we want to be using in this sense, so careful not to use it. And we probably also should change use permitted to probably use allowed, but I will defer to Steve on that. Notwithstanding any provision of law to the contrary, for any area in which housing density is limited to no more than 1 dwelling unit per lot or no more than 2 dwelling units per lot, a municipality shall allow a structure with up to 2 dwelling units per lot if that lot does not contain an existing dwelling unit. So we made a couple of changes here. The first was making clear that if the density allows no more than 1 dwelling unit, or if the base density allows no more than 2 dwelling units. So there's some towns where the base density is 1, and there are some towns where the base density is 2. So a duplex is the minimum that's allowed. We wanted to make clear first and foremost that we weren't unintentionally capping multifamily housing, because if the way the bill was originally drafted, you might say that we capped multifamily housing at 4. That's obviously not the intent. We want to make that clear. And we also want to make clear that where density is 1 or where density is 2, where the minimum density is 1 or 2, that a structure of up to 2 dwelling units shall be built. So for those that already allow two units, that's not going to be a big problem. That's not going to be an issue because they already do that. But where the density is a base minimum of 1, they will be required to allow the up to 2. And then furthermore, except that a municipality shall allow up to 4 dwelling units per lot if that lot does not contain an existing dwelling unit and the lot is located in a designated growth area within a municipality consistent with subsection 4349-A, subsection A, or subsection B. And that's the direct reference to the statute that related to growth areas, just to be clear. Or if the lot is served by a public water system in a municipal, special district, or comparable sewer system, and a municipality without a comprehensive plan, a municipality shall allow structures on a lot with from there, the language is all the same as it was before. No changes from there. So the big change in this section is before we were allowing a triplex to be built on an empty lot outside of growth areas. Now we're saying duplex only on an empty lot outside of growth areas. Inside growth areas, a triplex or a fourplex would be allowed. So we're tying the larger density to the growth areas or places that have public water and public sewer. There were a few changes structurally from this point forward. So we strike the for any zone in which housing is permitted and so forth. And we reconstruct it so that now there's a number 2. In fact, the first section becomes number 1, which I think before was just language standing on its own. We create number 2 to be clear that this section is related to municipalities that have zoning. So their zoning ordinances have to reflect the following: a lot is considered single family, even if more than one dwelling unit has been constructed as a result of the allowance under this section, or subsection 4364-D. I don't think we can use and ors, right? No. So or would be preferred. Yeah. And then B, municipal zoning ordinances may establish a prohibition or an allowance for lots where a dwelling unit in existence after July 1st, 2023 is torn down and an empty lot results. So got questions after the initial vote that what happens if there's an existing structure gets torn down? Does this law apply to that newly created empty lot? And we're saying, we're not saying it isn't, but we're not saying it's not, but we're going to leave that decision to local zoning ordinance as to how they handle circumstances where a structure is torn down and an empty lot results. And then we create a section titled General Requirements. And this is related to, this says municipal ordinances may not establish dimensional size requirements or setback requirements for dwelling units allowed under this section that are greater than the dimensional requirements or setback requirements for a single family housing structure. I actually think this section already existed, but it was previously, this was previously an item under zoning requirements. So we pull it out because it's speaking in totality, not specifically to zoning. I think everything else gets renumbered. Item number 4, I think is listed. Is number 4 listed on here? Yeah, this is the same. So these just need, one needs to be struck and the other needs to be remain. And then there's a bunch of renumbering. We also clarify here that the owner of a housing structure must provide written verification. So we put the burden on the owner of the property to provide written verification rather than saying the municipality is required to draft an ordinance related to this. We're trying to avoid getting into the realm of requiring ordinances to be written, and especially if they don't already exist. And same language here related to the special district or comparable sewer system language. Same language under C of the water section as you saw before. If a housing structure is connected to public water, proof of adequate service to support any additional flow created by the structure, proof of payment for the connection, the volume and supply of water required for the structure. Again, typos because I was typing this out on my own, trying to copy other sections. And then municipal implementation remains the same with just changes in the referencing. There was a reference before, the renumbering requires the change. So that's the only thing that changes there. Shoreland zoning, I can't recall if shoreland zoning was under this section before, but we add the shoreland zoning language as you had previously seen it appear in other sections. We had the subdivision requirements, which had appeared in I believe this subdivision requirements appeared under this section. We actually put that same language in section 9, the density bonus, and section 11, the ADU section. So just being clear that nothing related to subdivision is interrupted by what this bill proposes. The private parties section, which I mentioned before, gets added to this section as it does the ADU section. And then we also add rulemaking authority for DECD in collaboration with DACF. Under this section, it's a may, not a shall. Unlike, I think the density bonus is a shall because there's a specific task that's provided to the agency under the density bonus. Under the 4-unit dwelling and the ADU section, we want to make sure that if there's need for technical rulemaking, that capacity is authorized. And then implementation, the date changes, as mentioned before. Under the ADU section, Not a significant number of changes here under the use permitted is pretty much the same. We again might want to not use the word permitted, but rather allowed. And then we added language after subsection 1-C that is as further defined in rulemaking, because section 4301 of Title 30A is the definition of an accessory dwelling unit is not necessarily tight, and I think there might be interest in tightening up that language. Stephen, I'm not sure, is this allowed?
So I think what you probably would want to do is you would want to say that that definition does apply, but if rules are adopted that changes that definition, then the rules that specify that definition apply.
Okay.
1 second, Mr. Speaker.
Yeah.
I have a question from Senator Hickman.
Oh, yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So, Mr. Speaker, can you tell me what the concern is from the Planning Committee about that? I'm certainly not a big fan of how allowing rule definitions to override statutory definitions ever.
Yeah.
So I actually oppose this part of the amendment, but I want to know why we can't just tighten up the definition in statute versus allowing rules to do it.
I don't know what the consequences would be for changing the definition under Title 4301. But I think the concern raised here was under Title 4, under section 4301, the definition doesn't really speak to the dwelling being a secondary dwelling or an accessory dwelling necessarily. There's no reference to like size requirements and that sort of stuff. So where we see the ADU as being, a smaller secondary residence added to an existing property, the definition from the planner's perspectives under 4301, they feel was a little bit too broad, and that's why they asked for this language to be added. But I would obviously defer to the committee's judgment on that. I think obviously this section of the bill does put some further restrictions around an ADU. So I merely took the suggestion and I would welcome feedback from the committee on that point.
Thank you, Madam Chair, if I may.
Absolutely.
Thank you. So the definition in statute reads as follows, just for anyone listening. Accessory dwelling unit means a self-contained dwelling unit located within, attached to, or detached from a single-family dwelling unit located on the same parcel of land. Definitions tend to be pretty straightforward. That one seems to be really straightforward to me. And so I guess I personally don't understand what the problem is with the definition. And if it needs some further container around it, I would think that would be done in a policy area of statute, as we already see here. But allowing rules to define something more than is in statute is really just a problem.
Yeah.
For legislative oversight purposes.
I think they may have been reading this section in and of itself as its own standing item. And I think, and perhaps Mr. Langland can weigh in. I think obviously there are sections of this bill that come after this section number 1 that further define what the ADU's permitted uses are, what the size requirements are. So personally, I would lean towards your thoughts on this, Senator Hickman, but in an attempt to try and satisfy the many perspectives that had come forward, this was one that was raised, and I just wanted to make sure that if they felt there could be further clarifying done, that it be done. I think, there's certainly an opportunity in the future, hopefully, to walk through Title 30A and maybe make some cleanup, because I think that is certainly would be a valuable task.
Thank you.
Any further questions on that, or?
I'm happy to have, if the committee wants to strike that, I would welcome their feedback on that specific piece.
Circle back. Oh, okay. Representative Bradstreet.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for being here. I have something not related to that directly, but
okay.
A difference. So we're differentiating between a single family dwelling unit and a single family lot. Is that right? Because if you look at section, section 10, 2A, a lot is considered a single family, even if more than one dwelling unit is there. So I'm wondering if
Yes,
could we
yes.
have an accessory unit put onto something that's other than a single family?
Yeah, so we
Okay.
wanted to, that language was added to clarify or to make certain that just because this section is allowing additional units to be on the lot, it shouldn't be considered a different zone. So if in towns that have zoning, obviously this will likely be a single family zone, because this bill would be permitting or allowing additional units to be added to that lot. For all intensive purposes, the lot shall still be considered zoned in the single family district, if that makes sense.
I guess so. A single family lot with actually a duplex on it could then not have an accessory dwelling unit, or could? I guess that's the question I'm asking.
If there was a duplex on the lot under this bill, the duplex would not be, the ADU would not be allowed unless the town decided to adopt its own permissive language, because obviously we're not restricting what towns could do. But this bill does not require that be allowed. Yeah.
Any further
Good question.
questions? We can also circle back, as people, I'm sure that it's a dense bill. So, as we come back, we'll circle through. And as far as the question that Senator Hickman raised, we'll circle back to discuss that as a group afterwards.
Okay.
So please take it away.
The other change here is similar to the 4-unit section where we reconstructed a bit. We create the zoning requirements section, calling out what zoning ordinances must comply with. At least one accessory dwelling unit must be allowed on any lot where a single family dwelling unit is the principal structure. Another term of art from our planner friends, prefer principal, not primary. And then B, a lot is considered single family even if more than one dwelling unit has been constructed as a result of the allowance under the section or subsection 4364-C. So again, speaking to the point that you just raised, Representative Bradstreet, making sure that even when we are allowing an ADU, we're not, for all intensive purposes, not changing by implication the zone from single family to a multifamily zone. Yeah. And then we create a general requirements section, again, similar to the 4-unit section, where we say, with respect to accessory dwelling units, municipalities must comply with the following conditions. A municipality shall exempt an accessory dwelling unit from any density requirements or calculations related to the area in which the accessory dwelling unit is constructed. For an accessory dwelling unit located within the same structure as a single family dwelling unit or attached to or sharing a wall with a single family dwelling unit, the setback requirements and dimensional requirements must be the same as the setback requirements and dimensional requirements of the single family dwelling unit, except for an accessory dwelling unit permitted in an existing accessory building or secondary building or garage as of July 1st, 2023. This was a flag raised by Maine Municipal Association that in some cases, accessory buildings have different setback requirements. And we want to make sure that we're not saying that the accessory building should have the same setback requirements as the primary structure on the lot. The accessory building should have the accessory building's setback requirements applied to the ADU. And then we finally say a municipality may establish more permissive dimensional and setback requirements for an accessory dwelling unit, should they choose. An accessory dwelling unit may not be subject to any, that's language that's already been used related to parking, but we just changed it from what I think was subsection E becomes subsection C under this new section 4 of the bill. Shoreland zoning becomes its own standing section, section 5, same language as before. Subsection 6, size requirements. It was previously G. We give it its own section. No language changes there. Water and wastewater becomes section 7, subsection 7, and no new language except for the language I referenced before under sewers and public water systems. So copy and paste from the previous section. Municipal implementation. No new changes here, except for some re-referencing, and we mirror the language that exists related to less restrictive requirements from the 4-unit section, which included the water and water section. So that just gets added, but otherwise there's just cross references that get changed as a result of the reconstruction of the section. So pretty straightforward. Rate of growth ordinance becomes subsection 9. That's not new. Subsection 10, subdivision requirements, is again the copy and paste from the other sections. It gets a section under the ADU part. Private parties, again, copy and paste gets added under this section. And then rulemaking authority, as mentioned before, is provided under this section. And then implementation date gets changed as well. And those are the changes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. At this point, I will open it up to questions from the committee after I just state we're all a little bit out of practice and definitely in the end of session mode. So there are just a couple of ground rules just to remind folks who are present and who are watching that the purpose of this meeting is for the committee to receive additional information from staff and the bill sponsor in order for members to consider the legislative proposals that are before us today and make recommendations or reports out to the legislature. And only committee members, the committee analysts, and those specifically invited to attend or asked by committee members will be participating in the work session here in person or on Zoom. For members of the public wishing to observe the meeting, as I stated before, it is being live streamed, but I apologize that I regretted to mention that at the beginning since we're all running straight here without lunch. With that, open it up to questions. Representative Pebworth.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question is, here we are late in the session, so I would like to know the schedule, the process, the opportunities that we as a committee have. If we vote on this today, what further opportunities we have to make amendments or to fix errors if necessary.
Absolutely. So we will have language review no matter what we decide today. That will be coming from our committee analysts that will then be distributed to us both by email and also with a bill of this size. I would ask physical copies distributed to our desk to be able to physically review. That will also be publicly posted online via the bill website as well as the committee materials website on the legislature.maine.gov. Additionally, if we were to find other items, things can be tweaked through floor and Senate amendments, or should there be anything else, we can always petition the presiding officers for additional meeting time as needed, even though I can see the bill sponsor and 50% of the presiding officers flinching when I say that. But hopefully that answers your question.
It does. Thank you very much.
Of course. Further questions from the committee at this time? Representative Sylvester.
Then if there are no further questions, then having voted on the prevailing side, I would move that we reconsider LD 2003.
I have a motion to reconsider. Do I have a second? Seconded by Representative Gear. With Representative Drinkwater. Oh.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I see in the latest amendment, we've dropped the HUD requirement, whereas the first amendment you had fair housing and non-discrimination. Municipalities shall ensure that the zoning ordinances and regulations are designed to affirmatively further the purpose of the Federal Fair Housing Act. Is that dropped out of this latest?
No.
I'm not on, I'm on the first one, and now I see, I didn't see it in this latest amendment.
Yeah, it's not, that section is unchanged in the bill.
Steve, we only have the sections that are changed. Is that correct? There's other sections that are.
No, I
This is the
mean,
entirety of the bill. Okay.
so I'm sorry I neglected to number the pages, but it's,
Just testing our reading comprehension.
yeah, it's like the fourth from the end.
Titled Municipal Role in Statewide Housing.
I think it's on
Yeah,
page 9.
It's section XXXX because I don't know where it will fit into the grand scheme of this bill, but it's unchanged from the last time the committee voted on it, but it still remains in this iteration as well.
Representative Drinkwater.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Listening to some people outside, and they were talking about the requirements of HUD and how that could open up a lot of municipalities to lawsuits. Do we know anything about that, Steve, or have you? No.
I don't know. I know the language says that it's the responsibility of the municipality to ensure that those ordinances comply, but I mean, ultimately, the courts are the arbiters of whether something is lawful or not. So if somebody feels that it's not, they can always challenge that legally. And I don't know sort of how municipalities craft their ordinances. I believe that usually they're done in consultation with attorneys, but so I assume that would play some role, but I don't know the specific effect of what this would do.
Thank you.
Before we move into further discussion on sort of the meat and bones that are before us on this bill, I do want, we do have a motion to reconsider, so I would like to vote on that. And then we can continue to discuss on what actions we'll take on the proposed language in front of us, just to make sure that we are, getting that out of the way and have it nice and clean. So with that, I'm going to call the motion on the move to reconsider. So all those who are in favor of reconsidering our actions whereby we pass this bill for passage will be voting yay, and those who are opposed will be voting no. So with that, please raise your hands, all those in favor of moving to reconsider. And keep them raised so I can count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 members voting in favor. The majority has it. And we will move into reconsideration and continue the work session on LD 2003. So with that, I will now open it up into further questions on the bill. Oh, do you need to know who made the motion?
No, someone called me about it.
Okay. With that, I think I have just a few questions, Speaker Fecta, if you don't mind. First off, one of the questions that I kept getting from folks a lot were about comprehensive plans. And I know you've done a lot of work to respond to town planners and to respond to communities to make sure that, this bill works within existing resources. So I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about the bill's role, for a town who does have a comprehensive plan, how it sort of marries with those towns and those communities.
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of the changes that are proposed here are rather technical in nature, structural, the way the way the bill is drafted in terms of like its structure. The most substantive change that is made in the bill from what you had previously voted on is tying the additional units allowed where the density was otherwise 1 or and now we're clarifying 2. If you're allowing the 3 and 4 unit structure to exist, we're tying that to a growth area, which is the result of a town's comprehensive plan, or to existing public water and public sewage. So that is for both the up to 4 unit and the density bonus section also gets tied to the growth area or the existing public water and public sewer. And that's the most substantive change that's proposed here because it is partly in response to concerns that were raised about sprawl. I think we probably have all heard those concerns raised, and we want to make sure that we're working in alignment with communities that have adopted comprehensive plans that say these sections of town are where we want growth to be located, that we are enhancing those lots that might otherwise be only allowing 1 unit or 2 units to allow the up to 4, but to do so in a way that is consistent with their comprehensive plan and is consistent with where they would like to see growth happen in their communities. In towns that don't have comprehensive plans with growth areas, or in towns that don't have public water and public sewer connections, this bill, the density bonus and this section of law will not apply to them. So it changes significantly the number of lots in which these provisions could have been applied to.
Thank you. So for example, I represent Harpswell, which, you have a very, waterfront community with some smaller lots. One of the concerns they had said was, would this, override the work we've done, when you're doing a public water and you might have a smaller lot to create, multi-families on a, postage size lot. And from what I'm understanding, what I'm reading here, in no way does that say that's what's going to be allowed on our, rocky coast of Harpswell. Correct?
Unless Harpswell is a comprehensive plan that's designated the lot as part of their growth area, then no, they would not be. This bill would not designate that lot as 3 and 4 units being allowed on that lot. But it would if the base density in Harpswell is 1 unit, they would be allowed. This bill would permit a duplex to be built on that lot.
Yeah, the accessory
Yeah.
unit. Thank you. Do I have further questions from the committee? Representative Sylvester?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So having parsed through the couple of hundred emails that I've received over the last few days, I just want to ask a couple of questions very clearly without permit or numbers or, right? So would this bill force a municipality to change the rural character of the municipality to put in and mandate that they put in duplexes and other affordable housing in their municipality?
This bill would allow a property owner that's bought a lot to build but has purchased an empty lot or currently owns an empty lot to build either a single family home or duplex. If you're talking about a rural community that someone has bought a property or currently owns property that has an empty lot, if that rural community does not have a comprehensive plan or that lot does not have access to public water, public sewer, nothing will change in regards to the rules relating to that specific lot. So a single family home or duplex would be allowed. For the property owner would have the right to build a single family home or duplex, so long as they meet the conditions of setback requirements and dimensional requirements, but not the further 3 or 4.
Oh, okay. So what you're saying is that it enhances the personal property rights of a property owner to be able to build these things, including ADUs on the property that they own. But we are not in any way forcing municipalities to create these structures and to force property owners to create a duplex on their empty lot. That would be up to the property owner themselves. So we're enhancing personal property rights.
Correct.
Within the structures of municipal zoning that currently exist.
Yeah, I mean, in some cases, there are some conditions that the municipalities will need to apply in order to meet the bill, because we want to make sure that the rules are adopted that govern this stuff. But if they don't have zoning ordinances, that section of the law won't apply to them. If they have municipal ordinances that need to be adopted to meet the law, they will have to do that. But otherwise, we're not forcing municipalities to build duplexes. We're asking municipalities to allow main people, to build a duplex if they want to build a duplex, or build a single family home if they want to build a single family home, or add an ADU to their existing unit. And the reality is there are over 200 municipalities in the state that don't have zoning districts. That for them, this won't be much of a change, because they have allowed a large number of uses for residential lots. And I don't think you want to get me started, but I would go through and start reading off the list of towns that don't have zoning districts. If anyone would like the Excel spreadsheet, I'd be happy to provide it to you.
I would ask you not to.
So there won't be
municipalities.
So for those communities, there's not much change here, because they have been doing this. They have been allowing property owners to say, I want to build a duplex on this lot. And so long as it meets the land use ordinances, they will likely gain permission to do so.
Thank you very much.
Representative Bradstreet.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you. But for those other communities, that would not apply then, right? They would perhaps be compelled to allow a multi-unit in a place where they currently allow only a single unit.
Yeah. So for a community that's based that their minimum density is 1 unit on the lot. The bill would allow the person who owns the property to build a duplex if they'd like.
Okay, the new, if this were to go
Yeah,
through.
yes.
Okay.
So if a community has adopted zoning districts,
Okay.
if it's outside the growth area, they could build either a single family home or a duplex on the empty lot. If it's in the growth area in communities with zoning districts, you're talking about adding you could add up to 4 units on the lot.
Couple other
Absolutely.
questions. So the intent of this is to cover every municipality in the state that's duly incorporated.
Well, it won't necessarily apply to every. It won't necessarily. Certain sections of the bill will not apply to every community. For example, the density bonus only applies to communities that have adopted density requirements. There are communities that haven't, so therefore the density bonus section will not apply to them. The up to 4 unit section, as already mentioned, there are some communities that have not adopted density requirements. So if they don't have a minimum density of 1 or minimum density of 2, the bill is not going to apply to them because that whole section of the law is based on whether or not a community has the density of 1 or density of 2 in place to begin with. So I haven't been able to do a complete analysis. I don't know if anyone is able to on how much of the bill applies to how many towns in the state. But there are some towns that this bill will, certain sections of the bill will not apply to. Now, the part of the bill that will apply to all communities is the section that allows an ADU to be built wherever single family dwellings are permitted or allowed. And I suspect that's every community, although maybe there are communities that don't allow any housing in their community. I don't know.
Just one more.
Absolutely.
Thank you. The effective date is July 1st, 2023, and it says affordable housing development approved on or after. What about those that are in process? Because we know these can take forever to get final approval on a housing development.
Is that under the density bonus section?
Yeah, it's under section 9.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I think if they're already, let's see. I think if they've been already permitted or approved, I think this section would, and Mr. Langland can probably correct me. I don't think this section would necessarily apply, but I think if a community wanted it to be applicable, I think they could take the positive action to do so. So if they wanted to allow the project to increase its density, I think they could allow that, but it may require reconsideration of a planning board of the project's initial approval, and so forth. But it's not going to necessarily apply to projects that are already in the works.
Yeah, I was just concerned about changing some of the requirements partway through the process.
Yeah,
That's all.
yeah.
Okay.
Is that a? Yeah.
Further questions from the committee? Representative Cuddy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for presenting all of this and a number of the things that you've talked about and that we've talked about before when this bill was brought forth impacts a lot of my communities, which are very rural communities, don't have zoning, don't have anything like this. So how does this bill impact communities like that don't have zoning, that don't have, you've mentioned it a number of times, but I just sort of want to sew it all together.
Yeah, it'll be a matter of whether or not, even if your community doesn't have zoning, whether or not the community has density requirements. Mm-hmm. So if there are density requirements, then there will be some applicability. But if there are not density requirements, then in several sections will not apply. But for the most part, we're in those communities, we're making clear what is allowable, which may just be allowable by implication. So for example, the town of Skowhegan doesn't have zoning districts. They don't have I went through their ordinance. They don't have a ton related to what is allowed and what's not allowed on a lot. You could have a house that gets converted into a commercial operation. So there's still a planning board, there's still an approval process, but there isn't a designation that this lot is for this and this lot is for that. What we're just making clear is that like an accessory dwelling unit has to be allowed. Has to be allowed. Even though that's by I think already implied in some of these communities because they don't have rules designating lot use. But for those communities, it'll be crystal clear to people if they want to add an accessory dwelling unit because their mom is aging and they want to find a place that's cheaper than sending her to assisted living or somewhere else. They can build that accessory dwelling unit onto their home.
Thank you very much. I mean, that was kind of how I read it and what I got from what you were saying. I know, in Winterport, if somebody wants to build a mother-in-law apartment, they just build it. We don't fight about it. We just build it. And this seems to be sort of what this bill is offering to people in other places as well. So thank you.
Yeah. So long as it meets shoreline zoning, that applies everywhere.
Well, yes.
Representative Bradstreet and then Representative Gear. Did I see your hand up?
Yeah.
Okay, so Bradstreet and then Gear.
Oh, thank you. Do you know how many cities or municipalities do have density requirements? How do they go about determining whether or not there's a density requirement? Because we keep hearing about this. Is this something that's going to be superimposed on a municipality at a higher level?
I don't know
Some
how
point
many
in time.
communities have density requirements. I don't. I suspect that would be a very difficult task for someone to go gather all the information. I don't envy the person who went through and tried to find out how many towns had zoning districts. They managed to do it, but I don't know that answer off the top of my head. Yeah.
Representative Gear.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thanks very much for being here, Mr. Speaker, and for taking us through the process that you've gone through, which I know has been very extensive over the last few weeks for sure. When I'm looking at legislation, I'm always looking at the question of, is this bill, and in this case, this amendment, accomplishing what we intended to accomplish, which is, as we've talked about at length on this committee, is starting to address the housing crisis that we face across the state. And I think the things that I'm hearing about today are really important. One, that we're continuing to set a goal for the state and have our vision clear about what the challenge is and how we might want to get there. It addresses the question that I have heard from my communities about the sprawl risk and basically, saying that this is designed to be focused in those areas that are not, kind of going out towards the edge of town and allowing multiple units to be built there. And then also, really importantly, I think that it allows municipalities to focus the increased density of their development in the areas where they're already designating those areas as such. Mm-hmm. And so it really aligns, in my mind, with what they have been looking for, what they've been already trying to do in many cases already, and gives them another tool in their toolbox to do that. So I would certainly be ready to make a motion if at this point, because I'm very happy with where we are.
I think there's a few other questions we wanted to answer, but I think we're getting pretty close there. Representative Gear. Senator Hickman.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So, like I said, I will likely support this amendment without that reference to defining things in rule. I can't do that. I did have a question about the private parties provision that's being added throughout. And this may be a question for Mr. Langland. Is there a way, as long as we're being explicit, to ensure that we add language to this private party provision that makes sure that the greater restrictions, some language around, provided that those agreements do not include provisions that abrogate constitutional rights? I feel like that just needs to be said, but I don't know how to say it in a way that the revisor of statutes would put forward. Do you understand my question, Mr. Langland? Okay, great.
The constitutionality of those private parties.
Correct.
Any further thoughts or questions on that? Representative Drinkwater, did I see your hand go up? Senator Hickman. You should be able to hit it now.
Semi up. I was gonna ask for Connor caucus. Since how we don't know where to go to caucus here.
So we're gonna put you into separate breakout rooms. It's gonna be determined by Ava. They have to go through
Well,
that.
I'm glad you are, because now we're definitely not going to start session back at 3 p.m. and I'll get to blame Representative Drinkwater. So
Aren't we just gonna blame the Senate for being late? That's what we used to do. Representative Sylvester.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The majority party would normally use the room directly to the left. And the minority party normally uses the room directly across the hall to the left. So then you will be standing in the restrooms.
1 second, Representative Drinkwater, before we do break up for caucuses, I did want to ask one last quick question and just make sure no one else has any other clarifying questions before we go into caucus. For me, just real quick, I mean, there's one thing I want to ask Speaker Fecto before we break to decide how we're going to deliberate on this. One of the things I've heard over and over again is that your bill is a one-size-fits solution to creating housing in the state of Maine. And I know this entire committee has received ad nauseum some of the largest amount of testimony and feedback on this bill from any bill I think I've had before me on any of the 3 committees I've been on in the last 2 years. And frankly, some of the comments that we've heard are rather hurtful about, who belongs in what communities in Maine, and that your bill would bring about, the destruction of humanity and the end of the state as we know it. But hyperbole and joking aside, I'm wondering how you could respond to folks who say that this is a one-size-fits solution, because I know just even looking at the questions that all of us have been asking as a committee, this is something that all of us have been working on really, really hard, bringing really critical questions and really good feedback, because we all do represent very different communities that look, unlike each other and, have different needs. I mentioned Harpswell and all of that. So I'm just wondering, before we break and discuss, I think, the last sort of piece I wanted to ask you is, how do you respond to that?
yeah, I mean, I think I'll try to use an analogy that may not work, but I'm going to do it anyway. So the bill says what's allowed.
Yep.
So you take generally things that are allowed, and then municipalities all sort of have their own Lego pieces, if you will.
I like Lego analogies.
And
Please keep going.
Those Lego pieces look different. They have different little pegs that will fit differently depending on the community. Because we're saying it's much of this bill is based on what the requirements are in each of those communities and whether or not what's allowed actually fits. So you take things that are allowed, but then you still use what the requirements are from community to community, and you say it's allowed. So the state policy is saying it's an allowable use, but then when it actually comes to its applicability in the community, it will depend on whether or not the allowed use fits on what the rules are in that community. So the pieces sometimes might not fit because they are based upon what each community has required for development, and the rules will be different in each community across our state. So I understand the inclination to lean on the argument that this is one size fits all, but it's not, because at the end of the day, it's premised on the requirements that are already in place and will change over time based on what communities say are the requirements or aren't what the requirements aren't. So I think Maine Municipal Association used the patchwork sort of analogy of having communities that have all these different patchworks, fabrics that are different colors and shades.
Yeah.
But I've seen quilts too, and most quilts have a border that is usually the same, and each patch goes on to that framework of the border. And so I think of it similarly. I think we're creating the border, we're creating the framework of what's an allowable use, but we're depending on each community's rules as to whether or not the pieces actually fit.
No, that definitely
So
makes sense.
I don't know. That was a lot of poetry.
I was gonna say,
not as poetic as anything Senator Hickman has ever said, but
Tuesday, if you're
I
gonna stick with
try.
the Lego analogy, you should have said, Medi Bumps and Wally Grass might have, one set of Lego set, but Cape Elizabeth or Lubec might,
Yes,
and it's
yes,
just whether they can build that Lego set in their community.
yes, correct.
Okay. Kidding aside, any further questions or any directions on who's going into what caucus room?
Just for the record, it's not my fault we're delayed now.
I had to bring it back to the Senate, Representative Drinkwater. I mean, there always has to be a full. Okay, well, we're gonna break for those who are watching. We'll be back in say 5-10 minutes.
Well, that depends on the majority party.
We'll be back as soon as humanly possible.
Hey, guys, can you hear me? Because I don't have any audio for the room.
We can hear you.
Am I going to be able to hear? But
Everyone has to turn their mics on when they speak so
Oh,
that you will be able to hear them.
okay. Thank you.
Uh-oh.
Well, you can't actually.
Oh, yeah, where is?
Oh, Prescott, yeah, he's
Yeah.
not here. Representative Prescott, we're here.
Okay. Well, welcome back, everybody, to the Joint Standing Committee on Labor and Housing. We just finished our corner caucuses, and I'm very excited. I want to give a quick moment to let Senator Stacey Guerin introduce herself via the hybrid mode, who's able to join us. So, Stacey, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself. Oh, you're on mute, Stacey, just like old times.
Oh, yes, just as old times. Senator Stacey Guerin representing Southern Penobscot County today.
And I'm also very excited not only to have you with us, Senator Guerin, but also get to truly try out the hybrid mode. So I'm glad you were able to make it. With that, we've just returned from our physical breakout room, aka corner caucuses. And we are still deliberating on LD 2003. We've had a motion to reconsider our actions on LD 2003. So at this point, I'd be looking for a motion. Representative Gear.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to move to pass on LD 2003, making sure, reflecting our conversation today, that we add the assurance that private parties can't violate constitutional rights in things that they implement. And then what's this, 4301? 4301. Move that in. move that.
Take it out.
Take it out. Sorry.
Taken out. Okay, we have a motion of ought to pass as amended. Is that clear, Mr. Leland? Okay, do I have a second? Seconded by Senator Hickman. So you have a motion on the floor. Do I have any questions on the motion? Any clarifying?
Oh, excuse you, I might as well say something here. Yeah. Well, I appreciate all the work that's gone into this, Mr. Speaker, I really do. I know you worked very hard on it. But I'm going to have to vote against the motion because I feel that it continues to impede on local control. And it is too much of a one size fits all. We've heard from a lot of people who are opposed to it, from small communities, which I represent. And so I'm going to vote according to their wishes, which I think is the wise thing to do as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also want to thank you, Mr. Speaker, for all the work on this bill and trying to, bring all sides together and to the table. For me, personal property rights is always one of the things that I hear about in a city, the city of Portland, which is perhaps the most zoned city in the state. And what people want is to be able to, within the rules, to be able to build on their land, to be able to have a sense that they own the property that they own. And so I feel that this bill, while it makes some limitations for municipalities, it does so in favor of personal property rights, which I know are what the constituents that I represent want. And so I will be supporting this bill. And again, I thank you for bringing it forward.
You know what my constituents want? They want to be able to hire a teacher who can live within the school district. They want to be able to hire a cop, hire a fireman. It's crazy how challenging it is to house people in some of the areas in Maine. And I know that there are so few bills that are perfect, and this might not be one of them, but good Lord, this will help our housing crisis.
Thank you, Representative Hepworth. Senator Garin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I will be joining my good friend, Representative Bradstreet, in voting ought not to pass today. I have heard from more people in opposition to this bill from my constituents than any other bill this session. And the desire for their small towns to be able to maintain sovereignty has been really the overwhelming theme. And so that's where I'm going today.
Thank you, Senator Garin. Representative Gear.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to add to Representative Pedworth's list to some of the things that my community is looking for. Seniors who are aging up and have sometimes lost their spouses and want to downsize to a smaller property in the area are finding they have to leave the communities that they've loved and leave the communities that they have friends and family in. And this will help them to do that. In addition, the other key thing that I think we all hear a lot from our constituents about is addressing climate change. And I was very encouraged by the changes in the bill that we've seen that will help to reduce sprawl, help to build more livable town centers and have more folks able to live in those walkable neighborhoods, reducing their footprint on the planet. So for those reasons, I'm very happy to support the bill today.
Thank you, Representative Gear. Representative Warren.
Thank you. And I just want to add is thinking about my community of Scarborough, we're a place where there's been a lot of work done by local leaders and community members to increase rates of growth and development. And there's a whole variety of, stumbling blocks and public comment and feedback and ways that, I've been a critic as well as a champion of that local development. And I just think that's part of the process of progress. And so I think that this is a great important step forward. As the Labor and Housing Committee, we've just had such longstanding issues around things like climate change and things like our very longstanding workforce shortage. So as a young person, I'll say I'm heartened to see this step forward, and I'm really actually grateful. And I think it speaks to maybe the impact that a bill like this can make, that we've had such tremendous feedback. I think it's only a good thing that there's people who feel comfortable, feel like they'll be heard and listened to. And I hope that people feel that they have been included throughout this process. That's really democracy in action. I hope it's going to spell good things for the future of our state. And so I'm very happy to support it. There's been many things, many ways that we've done housing that have not been working for a long time. So I feel hopeful and happy to support the motion before us.
Thank you, Representative Warren. Do we have any further comments from the committee at this time? I'm just going to add in real quick. I first ran for office when I was 25 years old, which I hate to admit was now 10 years ago. And one of the major reasons that I first ran for office was to make sure that my peers, my friends who'd all grown up in Brunswick and all grown up here in Maine had a chance at a future in our beloved home state. And a lot of the reasons I ran then are what fueling, empowering me now at 35. And I have to say, a bunch of us were having dinner this weekend, a core group of friends. I've known most of these folks since we were, in kindergarten together. Out of a group of 12 of us, I was the only one who was able to purchase a home. And a lot of my friends are getting to the point where they're having to leave either the state or our communities solely over the issue of housing. The average price of a home in my hometown has gone from $180,000 just a few years ago to well over, I think the last time I looked, it was around $390, but the only properties for sale currently listed in real estate, the cheapest one that's accessible is about $598,000. So we have a lot of work to do here. This is a first step. I also want to remind everyone, especially for those who are listening at home or here in the room, this is part of a package of bills. We have another, bite at the apple with, re-upping the zoning commission within the bill LD 1240, which is moving between the bodies. And I see, even if we might disagree on our actions here today, I know everyone sitting at this horseshoe is committed to making sure that we are able to make sure that young people, folks who are aging, all of us, frankly, everyone sitting at this horseshoe is able to make sure we make a difference for housing here in Maine. So with that, thanks for letting me be on my soapbox a little bit there. I know this is something that we're all very passionate for, and I want to thank the speaker for all of his incredible work, not only over the past 8 years, but particularly on this bill. So with that, it's time to call the roll. Senator Guerin, if I can ask you to pop on video real quick, so that when Ava goes through, we can make sure we record your vote. So with that, Ava, would you please call the roll?
Right,
Oh, and make sure people have their mic on when you vote so that everyone can hear.
It's an ought to pass as amended. Senator Daughtry.
An enthusiastic yay.
Senator Daughtry, yay. Senator Guerin.
No.
Senator Guerin, no. Senator Hickman.
Yay.
Senator Hickman, yay. Representative Sylvester.
Yay.
Representative Sylvester, yay. Representative Bradstreet.
No.
Representative Bradstreet, no. Representative Cuddy.
Yay.
Representative Cuddy, yay. Representative Drinkwater.
Nay.
Representative Drinkwater, nay. Representative Gear.
Yes.
Representative Gear, yes. Representative Morris.
No.
Representative Morris, no. Representative Pepworth.
Yes.
Representative Pepworth, yes. Representative Prescott, absent. Representative Rader.
Yes.
Representative Rader, yes. Representative Warren. Representative Warren, yes. That's 8 affirmative, 4 no.
Thank you. That's 8 in favor. And what would the minority report be?
Ought not to pass.
Ought not to pass. So with that, the ought to pass is amended, prevails. And with that, I will close the work session. No further questions from Mr. Langland? Okay, with that, I will close the work session on LD 2003. Thank you very much, everyone. And we have one last thing to work on. I'm going to now open the work session on LD 1808. This will be on everyone your purple sheets, and I will kick it over to Mr. Langland.
So this is language that I think the committee has already seen. It was a unanimous ought to pass as amended committee report. What this bill does is, if you recall last session, there were civilian employees in the Department of Public Safety, Crime Lab, and Computer Crimes Unit. They were put into the 1998 special plan, but only on a prospective basis. What this bill does is it makes it so that all of their service is calculated as if they were in the 1998 special plan for the whole time. And I understand there's going to be an amendment proposed for reconsideration. And that on the pink sheet is what it does is it transfers those employees out of the 1998 special plan, and it creates a special plan Specifically for them, that is 25 years with no age. The service must be in that capacity. So it doesn't include all state service. Happy to answer any questions. And I see also that Miss Kathy Moran is also on Zoom if you have any specific retirement questions.
Thank you so much. Questions, comments, thoughts, feelings? I feel like we're all going to need a special retirement plan after today. Representative Sylvester?
Thank you. Just to be able to move this to the next step, having voted on the prevailing side, I would move that we reconsider LD 1808.
Do I have a second? Second by Representative Rader. And with that, all those in favor of reconsideration for this, Stacy, if you want to vote, just pop on your video and raise your hand or not raise your hand, depending on. All right, it is now it's unanimous of those present and voting. With that, we're going to move further into a work session on LD 1808. Representative Sylvester, followed by Senator Hickman, or Senator Hickman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So if Ms. Moran can just explain a little bit about this new amendment and how it may change or not change the fiscal note. I know that that's not something that can necessarily be answered, but will it stay the same approximately or what?
Good afternoon. Thank you for the question. This bill, this amendment to move to a straight 25-year plan would increase the fiscal note. We've provided that information, I think a little earlier in the session. I can tell you that it raises the fiscal note by about $134,000. So the original fiscal note is about 1.5 million. The fiscal note for this straight 25-year plan would be about 1.6 million. Did some rounding there, but the math works out to about $134,000 difference in the fiscal note.
Thank you. And thank you, Ms. Moran. And is this proposal, I guess, better than what the 1980 plan is for these particular employees?
It's a great question. One thing that's been very interesting in studying this particular group of people is that whether a plan benefits a person or not is very individually determined. And so looking at the demographic, and this is part of the reason why the cost isn't much greater than it is to move to a straight 25-year plan, is that some people would be better advantaged by staying in the 1998 special plan. Some people would be more advantaged if they go to the straight 25-year plan. And from working with our actuary on this, it's about a 50-50 split. So it's not something that I can say, the 25-year plan is better for the entire group. Typically, the ability to retire at 25 years with no penalty or no age reduction is an advantage for people. But the 1998 special plan has other features to it. For example, the 1998 special plan allows people to retire with 10 years in the plan. So if you have people who aren't going to work a full 25 years in this capacity, then they may be better off in the 1998 special plan. So it really is individual specific. And I know that's not helpful in guiding or helpful in terms of the decision you need to make, but it is how it works out for this particular group of people. And that's typical in any, plan design or plan question is there's always going to be people who will be better off or not better off in certain types of plan changes.
Final question.
Absolutely.
So my final question is, will this be a choice?
No.
This will be, everyone will have to be in this new special plan.
Right. So one of the issues we raised in, I think, 2 or 3 of the special plan bills that came before you this session is that since last session, when this group was provided a choice, we've gotten some information from our pension council, which helps us in ensuring that our plan stays in compliance with federal law. And that guidance is that employees who are in positions like this are not allowed to make choices around the plan that they're in. You as a legislature or policymakers can change the plan by which the entire group is covered. but individual employees are not permitted to make those elections. So if you make the change, it will be for everybody who's in these positions.
Thank you.
Do
Welcome.
you have any further questions for Ms. Moran? Representative Sylvester?
My question isn't for Ms. Moore, no. So
Sorry, Moran. It's been a long day without much food. Apologies for the mispronunciation. Representative Bradstreet.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Ms. Moran, for being here. I'm looking at my notes from our public hearing, and I think that this is for forensic workers and chemists, but does not include those who do clerical work. Is that correct?
That is correct. This would be the same group that was moved into the 98 special plan last year. There's a number of positions that are covered, but they are the people who are the hands-on people in terms of the work that's being done, that's been described to you. It does not include administrative, clerical type people.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further questions? Matt, thank you so much for being here. Representative Sylvester.
So I just wanted to say, I think particularly because this was a unanimous report, I think that the folks on the committee wanted to help these workers out, wanted to make sure that they got what they wanted. And so when it was brought forward to move to this 25-year plan, I really only had one thing. I wanted to make sure that this was the plan that the workers wanted to be in. And I've asked several times that question be brought, including this morning, that question be brought to them. And this is the plan that they decided as a group that they wanted to be in. And they affirmed that for me. And so that was the most important thing, because I didn't want to get into a situation where we were doing something again that wasn't what they had hoped. So with that, since I spoke so long, I can't make a motion, but I'd sure love to hear one.
We'll definitely be looking for a motion. I just want to make sure the bill sponsor didn't have anything that they wanted to add. All good. Oh, I thought Senator Dye, yeah. Sorry, Representative Collins. I totally flipped the sponsorship of the bill. Clearly it is passed.
I was a co-sponsor. I worked quite a bit on it, and I can confirm what Representative Sylvester said, that this was what was best for the whole. And they're also hoping that some other issues from some certain workers might be fixed. I think their legislation Representative Hickman may be working on, but this is what, after all these years, what they thought was the best way forward. This is what the original intent was for this group.
Thank you. For those, I realize Representative Collins is sitting in the audience. So for Senator Guerin and for others who are listening, the gist of what Representative Collins just said as one of the bill's co-sponsors, that this gets to the heart, and also its assurances that, building off of what Representative Sylvester is saying, and also what the information that I've received, that the two units that this is applicable to, that they are in agreement with where we are with this language. So at this point, I'd be looking for a motion. Senator Hickman.
As a co-sponsor of the bill, I move ought to pass as amended with the pink sheet.
I have a motion on the floor, seconded by a bunch of people to my left, so I'll go with Representative Rader because she met my eyes first. Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, Ava, if you wouldn't mind calling the roll.
That was an ought to pass as amended. Was it Hickman, and who was the second?
Representative Rader.
Okay. All right. Senator Daughtry.
Yay.
Senator Daughtry, yay. Senator Guerin.
Yes.
Senator Guerin, yes. Senator Hickman.
Yay.
Senator Hickman, yay. Representative Sylvester.
Yay.
Representative Sylvester, yay. Representative Bradstreet.
Yes.
Representative Bradstreet, yes. Representative Cuddy.
Yes.
Representative Cuddy, yes. Representative Drinkwater.
Yes.
Representative Drinkwater, yes. Representative Gear.
Yes.
Representative Gear, yes. Representative Morris.
Yes.
Representative Morris, yes. Representative Pebworth.
Yes.
Representative Pebworth, yes. Representative Prescott is absent. Representative Rader.
Yes.
Representative Rader, yes. Representative Warren.
Yes.
Representative Warren, yes. It's unanimous with 12.
Unanimous of those present and voting, I will close the work session on LD 1808. And thank you to everyone who's worked on that. Before we adjourn, because I know the House has gone back into session, Mr. Langland, do we have anything else to take care of?
I don't. I think we're anticipating a couple of more language reviews I will give you the speaker's bill physically. I think we only have maybe 1 or 2 remaining, and that will probably be electronic when available. So keep an eye on the emails.
Absolutely. Any other questions from the committee? Representative Sylvester?
I just wanted to say, well, we had everybody here together that next week we'll be trying to get together and break a little bread as a committee. And so look for an email. I'll probably, we'll try a couple days. And obviously we want to make sure that we thank our fantastic staff, Steve and Justin. And so, I would just say thank you. And
Thank you to Ava for stepping up several times this session to help out as well.
I just want to say, as former chair, that I'm really happy to know our last policy vote was unanimous.
That's an excellent point, and I do want to thank everyone for welcoming me. And with that, I will adjourn this session. I wish it was this session. Oh.